Drake, the transfer portal on absolute fire. It's been open for a week now. And the Big 12 making some big moves, making some big splashes. But before we talk about guys that are joining new programs, we've given Kenny Dillingham and the boys a lot of love. No projected starters jumping out of the Arizona State machine or jumping anywhere else from the Sun Devils. As much as we give love to guys joining new programs, Kenny Dillingham doing it off the field too. Now, again, they have a playoff game. The guys are getting ready to go and play too. So we'll see what happens afterwards. But Arizona State not really projected to lose much in the portal. Another crown in the hat of Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, they're only growing. They're only getting better guys coming into Arizona State to play football. Just landed another blue chip receiver out of Clemson. This is an Arizona State team that's building a machine. You're in a state where you're the perfect mix of California and Texas. Take the best players from two of the best states in high school football and then give it a destination that everybody wants to go to. Hey, I would love to go to Arizona State and be a hop, skip, and a jump from Scottsdale. I spent a weekend there this last year. It is the hub you're right outside of Phoenix, a hub for anything that is anything in the state of Arizona and going out west. So destination city, perfect spot between California and Texas. You've got an airport close to you that's going anywhere and everywhere, including internationally. Why not, if you're a player, why not would you want to go to that campus who's bringing a quarterback back next season, has a head coach who's a legacy and could be a lifer there, and is one of the youngest head coaches in college football and has such a fire and fervor. And not only that, they're in the college football playoff. We don't have to sell you anything. We don't have to say, hey, come help us rebuild here. We were 3-9 last season. Come help us do something special here. No. You're walking into a program that's already doing something monumentally special. Now you get to build on that. I know I'm mentioning more so why players would come there, but that's the same reason you wouldn't want to leave. Stick it out with your quarterback. Stick it out with your head coach. You've got an opportunity at Arizona State, whether you're a 2-star player or a 5-star player, to walk in next season and have a shot at a national championship, the same they do this year. That's a very good spot for Arizona State to be in, and I think it shows. As many people dislike Kenny Dillingham for some of his outbursts this season, the kids love him. The kids want to play for him. And when you're a coach and that is how you're described, I don't care if Jimmy 2 Cents on the internet doesn't like me as long as my players are staying put. And that's the case for Dillingham right now.
A very interesting aspect of that is people have talked about that Clemson transfer, and I don't know how big of an impact this would have, but that would be a lot of fun if it kind of gave Arizona State a leg up in their second round matchup if Clemson was able to somehow get past Texas. So we'll see what happens there. Who has impressed you the most so far in the portal in the Big 12?
Kansas and Texas Tech are both up there. Houston's doing a lot of good work right now. I'm going to lean Texas Tech, though Kansas has brought in a good chunk of solid commits. Tech with 3 4-stars already. That's second most in the country. Tied up there with LSU and just behind Ole Miss. For Joey McGuire, he understands, hey, 8 wins is a really good standard to hit in Lubbock, something they've struggled to get to in years past. That's just kind of been the middling. Hey, Texas Tech, we win 8 games. Hurrah! We're not always great. We're not always terrible. It's what we do. He wants to push past that bubble with the Red Raiders, and to do that, he's going to have to attack the transfer portal. Why not do it by immediately bringing in 3 4-stars? He's already gotten, at the time of recording, 7 different commitments to bring guys in, and they're coming from the SEC. They're coming from the MAC. They're experienced. They're young. It's a really good mix of guys on the defense and the offense, and he's building an offensive line. He's got a tackle, interior offensive lineman, defensive lineman. How do we build those trenches? Of his 4 stars, one's a corner, one's a wide receiver, one's an interior offensive lineman. I think those guys all come in with an opportunity day one to play for Texas Tech and bring competition at the very least. Baylor did this last year with Zaquan Finn at quarterback. They brought in a kid who was going to be their starter the entire year, give him the Brink truck and NIL money, and then he wasn't very good. But it created such competition that the backup, Sawyer Robertson, had to perform. And from there, he became the top 5 quarterback in the country in QBR. So for Texas Tech, could we bring a kid in who competes for a starting job, and that competition makes us better as a program? The answer is yes. They're doing it right now. Texas Tech, Kansas, Houston, those are the 3 big ones already that stand out. But Iowa State, they brought in 2 wide receivers who were pretty darn good, and the second they stepped on campus, they canceled the rest of their visits and said, we're coming here, we're doing it together. One of those coming from UCF. I like where the Cyclones are too.
What about some quarterbacks that there were some rumors or some thoughts that they might jump into the portal? Do you think that, I'll just ask you straight up, do you think Avery Johnson and Jalen Daniels both stick with their programs?
Absolutely. I do not see Jalen Daniels at this point leaving because his season last year was so tumultuous. Now we'll have a new offensive coordinator. Coach Z has been promoted as Jeff Grimes has gone to Wisconsin. And Avery Johnson at Kansas State, kind of the same. The New York Post had him as their Heisman pick, and he didn't live up to that hype. I watched him live this year, and one out of every 3 passes he threw into the student section. And then another one out of those 3 passes, he's putting a dime, splitting 2 defenders 40 yards down the field. And you're just wondering, Avery, can you do one of those things more consistently than the other? So he would have opportunities in the SEC and the Big Ten. And we argued last offseason that the transfer portal had become this minor league. The Big 12 could become a minor league for the SEC to poach the best players. That's not what's happening right now. And Avery Johnson will stay put. Jalen Daniels will also stay put at Kansas. Those 2 guys, each in the same state, the Sunflower State, will lead their schools next season. I firmly believe that. And both of them will have a lot to prove because they're 2024. Though it did go well, didn't go as well as they overall wanted it to.
Can't do a portal video and not talk about Coach Prime in Colorado. And we've saved them for kind of the end of this video. Certainly expecting them to make a pretty big splash. Caden Salter, Liberty quarterback, potentially looking at Colorado and Syracuse, a big battle there. Are you expecting, yeah, obviously the answer is yes to this, but how big of a splash maybe is the better answer or question do you expect Colorado to make?
They won't. 43 players out of the portal last year for Colorado, 45 who left, 43 who came in, and Colorado will not do that this year. They will instead make bigger splashes in smaller amounts. This isn't a roster overhaul. Deion has finally built what he wants in Boulder and can build around the pieces he already has. For the Buffs, they can be much more selective going into next season, so the splash won't be near as large, won't be near as wide, but it'll be even bigger in terms of how big those names get, how big those recruits are, the amount of stars next to their name as well. For now, TJ, Colorado has just one commit at the time we're recording. That will certainly go up, but I think it already shows the pace is going to slow for the Buffs because Deion has what he wants in Boulder, and that's not a bad thing. BYU and Colorado both, who are again meeting that Alamo Bowl, have combined for just 1 commit out of the transfer portal so far. So things will slow in Boulder, but I don't think that means the quality of football will go down, and I do believe that the bowl game that Colorado is sold out for does take some focus away from the transfer portal. So Deion will be there later on. I think he's put a bug in the ear of the kids he really wants. And at this point, if I'm anybody in the country and Deion picks up the phone, I'm going to answer it, at least hear him out. That will be the case. He may grab toward the end of the portal some of those bigger names who are holding out. As for now, though, a lot of focus on that bowl game and a lot of focus on building around the roster he already has with the young guys he got out of the portal last season.
Is there anybody else in the Big 12? We've talked about Texas Tech. We mentioned Iowa State briefly. We talked about Arizona State, BYU, Colorado. Is there anybody else in the Big 12 that you could see kind of making some splashes and making some moves that kind of take them to the next level? You maybe like a Kansas State or a Kansas that maybe underwhelmed this year, but just thoughts on teams that here as the portal continues to go on may be pretty active and may kind of propel themselves up to competing in the Big 12 next year.
You know, TJ, I look at schools like Baylor and see them as a team, and TCU even as well, who need positive attrition. We need a couple guys to leave. That's going to be the case. That even at Kansas State, possibly, or at Kansas, hey, we need some guys to get out of here that were either toxic in the locker room or just weren't going to contribute, weren't going to create the aforementioned competitions. But when you look at schools that need an overhaul, they need transfers, Oklahoma State and Utah stand out immediately. You and I talked a couple of weeks ago. Mike Gundy is so firmly on the hot seat right now. Call the fire station. That guy needs some help, and help in the form of not just coordinators, but also new players in Stillwater. He hasn't been a huge portal guy. He's trusted his recruiting from the high school ranks. He's going to have to do it this season to create competition and bring in better players. Then for Kyle Whittingham at Utah, they've seen a mass exodus. So far, a lot of players. I'll talk about later on this week on my show, how many have left for Utah and how many are positive attrition and others that could have been stars later on that are exiting right now. And also, BYU is ready to poach a lot of those kids. That creates an interesting dynamic out there in that state. For the Utes, though, they got 4 commitments so far. 2 of them 3 stars, the other 2 not really ranked by 24/7. They're going to need to pick it up in the portal because they're losing guys hand over fist, and they were 5-7 last year with the Big 12 championship roster. And is Cam Rising coming back? They maybe have the most questions of any school this offseason. Utah needs some real help, real overhaul out of this portal offseason.
Drake, I know you're breaking down the portal, almost daily, I'm sure, on your channel. You mentioned that, but where can people follow you? Where can they find your work to get more of that?
Yeah, at Drake C. Toll on Twitter or at LO Big 12 on the same platform. And then wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube with Locked On Big 12.
The fastest growing and the first to hit 25,000 subscribers. Boom, I saw that yesterday on Twitter. Congratulations to you, man. We really do appreciate you taking some time and chatting with us here just about every week about the Big 12.
Always fun. We'll never call it a series. We'll never say it's a weekly thing, but it's getting close, and I like it, TJ. Always a pleasure to be here.